The mission of the Inattentive ADHD Coalition is to ensure that children with inattentive ADHD are diagnosed by the age of 8 and that adults with inattentive ADHD receive prompt and accurate diagnosis when seeking help. To learn more about our mission and how you can help, visit iadhd.org.
It sounds like it's going to be really helpful for adults with ADHD.
Thank you so much for mentioning it. It's been a project that I have had in mind for about 15 years. It's the very first book ever focused on older adults. And I wrote a proposal 15 years ago, and there was no interest in it because of demographics. Suddenly the demographics shifted and people were interested finally. I'm excited about it as an adult with ADHD myself, that there's finally something that focuses on what happens after we get to be 55 or 60 or 70.
Exactly. A lot of us are still getting diagnosed at those ages, right? Unbelievably. Or is that not true?
That's very true. People are getting diagnosed because members in their family, one generation down or even two generations down, get diagnosed and say, Mom, you were just like two. Maybe you've got it. It's happening in reverse.
My own child led to my own diagnosis. So I guess it works all different ways. But we're particularly interested in inattentive ADHD. I'm just curious how you see the difference with that and a more hyperactive person.
That's a very good question without a very clear answer. We're learning the more we study ADHD. I've been working and specializing in ADHD for 40 years. What we thought 40 years ago is so different than what we understand now, and it's going to continue to. But I'm not a big believer in these categories. In fact, we used to have three categories: predominantly hyperactive, impulsive, and then combined type, and predominantly inattentive type. Then we discovered that there was no such thing as hyperactivity and impulsivity without the distraction. I'm a real believer that there's a continuum of hyperactivity and impulsivity that's very marked at one end of the continuum and not so much at the other. I would categorize myself as somebody that's in the middle. Certainly, many of my female friends jokingly call me hyperactive. If you looked at me, you wouldn't say, oh, she is hyperactive. But I am constantly in the middle of multiple projects. That's my sweet spot. I need a lot of stimulation, and it comes from being involved in multiple projects all at the same time.
I totally get that. It's like you say yes, maybe impulsively, to anything that comes along and find yourself overcommitted sometimes.
Absolutely. And the person I'm usually saying yes to is myself. I have an
Right.
idea. Yes, that's a great idea. What about the one you had yesterday?
The novelty is always best. Let me ask you, Kathleen, what age were you diagnosed?
I realized I had ADHD rather than diagnosed by someone else. At the time that it became very clear to me that I had ADHD, women were barely recognized as having ADHD. This was before Pat Quinn and I wrote the book, Understanding Women with ADHD. As I said, we've learned so much more about what ADHD looks like. One of my lectures is calling ADHD a coat of many colors. It really is. There's such enormous variety in the way we present. I don't think anyone at the time I realized I had ADHD would have diagnosed me with it because I was a functional adult. I had a PhD. I was a clinical psychologist. Where's the ADHD? There really is and should be a distinction between a diagnosis and a disability. That's true with depression. There are lots of people with depression that don't have a disability called depression. When people have a disability called depression, they aren't able to work, they aren't able to get out of bed, they can't function, they have a disability. But that doesn't mean all the people that feel depression and get up and go to work in the morning aren't depressed. We've had this odd notion in the world of ADHD that you
Sorry.
have to be disabled to qualify for the diagnosis. I am not a proponent of that belief.
Isn't impairment part of the diagnosis?
That's what I'm saying. It's as if saying you're not depressed because you're not impaired. You still drive your car, go to work, feed your kids supper, so you are not depressed. That would be a ridiculous statement to make. We really have conflated diagnosis and disability. A committee a million years ago, when they were talking about ADHD as a disorder of childhood, made that part of the diagnosis. I'm not a believer in the DSM description of ADHD.
I see.
An awful lot of other people, including researchers, aren't. And yet that's what we're stuck with if we're doing research.
I see.
I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
stuck
yeah.
with it. I'm a clinician. That's how we brought women and girls to the forefront. That's how we're bringing older adults to the forefront, highly gifted people with ADHD. 25 or 30 years ago, luminaries in the field of ADHD would stand up in court testifying against people with ADHD that wanted accommodations in taking their medical board exam or their LSAT or their MCAT. They couldn't possibly have ADHD. They wouldn't have gone to medical school. We really believed that then. And now we know it's not true. In those years, ironically, I worked with physicians who lost their job due to their ADHD. Yet at the very same era, people were standing up and saying, if you're a medical school graduate, you can't possibly have it.
That's particularly true with women, right? Because women might not be diagnosed, but if we have ADHD, we're coping. We've developed these coping skills that might be torturing us on the inside, but not visible on the outside.
Or torturing us on the outside. I think that the word that women almost universally use to describe their life is I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Overwhelmed.
yeah.
I don't have men coming into my office and saying I'm overwhelmed. I think it really is a female condition. And by the way, speaking of projects and books, I'll tell you a funny story. Pat Quinn has been asking me for at least 5 or 6 years, we've got to revise our women's book. It's so out of date. We wrote it 25 years ago. An entire generation has grown up in those 25 years. But I was working on my book on older adults. So I said, as soon as I finish it, you're on. So I turned in my final manuscript, and the next morning I emailed Patty and said, let's go. I finished my other book.
Kathleen, can we get back to when were you diagnosed? Like, how old were you?
When did I realize that I had ADHD? Diagnosed myself. In those days, women weren't getting diagnosed. This was the late 80s, the early 90s. I had no idea I had. I come from a family where so many people have ADHD. We look very
Just seem
different.
natural.
Oh, no. In fact, I was going to say the opposite, that
Ah,
we're also different from one another. I had a younger brother. Anyone would have diagnosed with ADHD. He was the traditional, hyperactive, oppositional, I hate school little boy. He was also dyslexic, so school was very hard for him. Everybody knew my brother Richard was hyperactive. There's no question about that. I was such a contrast. I was a good student. I wasn't oppositional. I wasn't hyperactive. People would say, what? How could you possibly have
but
this
I'm going to
condition?
go back to how old were you when you realized you had it?
I was in my early 30s and I was treating kids. That's who got diagnosed. That's who was treated. But then those kids began to grow up. I continued to treat them. The parents came to me and said I was exactly like that when I was a kid. It just became clearer and clearer that this is a lifespan
But were
condition.
you already specializing in ADHD before you realized that you yourself had it?
Yes, that's what I'm
Oh my
saying.
gosh. Okay, so
When I was in graduate school, the whole concept of learning disorders was in its infancy. We were just beginning to realize there was this thing called learning disorders. We didn't call it ADHD. We called it hyperkinesis,
Oh,
minimal
wow.
brain dysfunction. We were in the dark ages.
Yeah.
Uh, we thought it was all boys, all hyperactivity all day long. I wasn't like that. How could I have ADHD? As I began to understand the enormous variety, that it finally dawned on me. I can remember numerous incidents in my girlhood, adolescence, young adulthood that was ADHD. I was, and still am, such a hyper focuser. I'm really almost deaf while I'm reading. My husband and I have been together for almost 50 years, and it took him a couple of decades to realize I wasn't ignoring him. We would
Mhm.
be standing in a grocery checkout line, and if I was reading a magazine and he's 18 inches behind me and says something, I hear mumble, I'm reading. I have no awareness that he is trying to initiate a conversation. When I was a little girl, I sat there with my nose in a book, which you don't think of kids with ADHD doing. That was my great escape, nose in a book. I was such a hyper focuser that my grandmother insisted that I have my hearing tested. She
Oh,
must
wow.
be deaf. She's got to be deaf because she's not hearing us at all. You
But you
know,
were a good student, right?
I was a very good student and loved school because I didn't have learning disorders. I
Uh-huh.
had ADHD. The ADHD brain can focus really well on anything that is interested in. And I was interested in school. In
That's
fact,
great. So you weren't distracted. Being distracted was not a problem for you growing up.
I wouldn't say that. My mother saved all of our report cards, and maybe 10 years ago, I came across mine and read my first grade report card. The teacher was complaining that I asked too many questions.
Oh, it's
I can
interesting.
remember holding my hand up and waving it, please call on me. It was driving her crazy. I was really intent on what was going on and I wanted to participate. She wanted me to be quiet and quit waving my hand around.
I remember getting sent out of class all the time in grade school for interrupting, for exactly that kind of
You
behavior. But
got it.
yeah, did you actually get in trouble? Were you disciplined for this?
Was not in any terrible way, but I often joke that the only reason that I know my multiplication tables is in fifth grade. The punishment for talking in class was to write your entire multiplication table from 1 times 1 to 12 times 12. I can remember on the school bus till my hand felt like it was falling off, writing my multiplication tables because I talked in class. My best friend in fifth grade, she and I were neck and neck for being the top students, but she did not have ADHD. Her name was Julie. And I was always saying, what did she say? What page are we on? Yeah.
Even though you were interested in school, was it harder for you? Do you think you had to try harder than other kids your age?
I wouldn't say that was the case for me. I did try hard. In fact, the only teacher conference my mother ever requested was in sixth grade. She went to talk to my sixth grade teacher to ask, why is she working so hard? Why is she doing this?
There,
Worried about
yeah, that's a strategy.
I was
Um,
just all in.
uh-huh. Do you think you'd be diagnosed today as a
Oh,
child?
sure.
You would,
Oh,
because of that
it would
talking too much and that kind of behavior.
even today, it would take somebody that really knows what they're doing to diagnose
Mhm.
somebody like me. In fact, the book that Pat Quinn and I are starting to work on, we're going to have a section in their own voices. Women with ADHD can talk about their lived experience with
Hmm.
ADHD. Twice exceptional women, very high IQ women, doctors, lawyers, professors, professionals, you name it, but have ADHD. There's still plenty of psychiatrists who are untrained. I can't tell you how many women have come to me after being told by a psychiatrist, we don't even need to have this appointment. I can tell you right now, you don't have it. You've got a law degree.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think it would have helped you to have been diagnosed?
Not at the time. I say that there weren't any accommodations to be had. I didn't need medication. I have the gift of hyper. I don't think I suffered greatly from having not been diagnosed. Understanding ADHD and treating so many people with ADHD, I almost consider myself a living laboratory because I struggle with most of the same issues. I'm thinking in my own life, how can I reduce this or improve this or change this?
Where are your struggles? I'm not hearing about any kind of struggles other than your husband getting impatient that you don't hear him talking to you.
When I was working on my book on older adults, still distracted after all these years, I rewrote several chapters without realizing I'd already written them.
Oh, wow.
I kid you not.
The toll is an extra work or just forgetting things. Where do you find that your ADHD? I'm hearing about how it's actually a
Sure.
strength, but where do you find it?
Well, in many ways, it is a strength. Going on my email is an incredible distraction. I get many emails a day, and I will go on my email intending to send you an email, but I go on the email and I'm immediately distracted by all the emails that have come in and may completely forget to write the email that I went on my email was to write.
A lot of people would say that. It's become very common for people to say, oh, yeah, I'm a little ADHD. Do you think society is making all of us more moving in that direction?
I couldn't agree more. ADHD is the only psychiatric disorder that has no symptoms that aren't shared to some extent by the general public. That's why it's so easy to dismiss as, oh, I do that. Oh, doesn't everybody do that? I think it's so hard for people that really do struggle to get that. And they get it all the time. Oh, I lose my car keys. Oh, I forget.
It takes it less seriously. On the one hand, we're canaries in the coal mine because there's so many forces in society now, like email, that just distracts everybody and makes everybody forgetful. But at the same time, I think there's real difference between somebody who can actually be diagnosed with ADHD and people who are distracted by life.
Yes, but there's a huge overlap. I really want to write more about this. There's a growing body of research having to do with cognitive functioning from ADHD on one end to Alzheimer's on the other end. Those are huge degrees difference in cognitive functioning. But what we're learning is that good cognitive functioning is impaired by our modern lifestyle.
For sure.
That
Yeah. So that
the
is something that everybody is moving in that direction of having less and less attention.
more than less and less attention. Dale Bredesen is a physician who wrote the book called The End of Alzheimer's, in which he gave this sort of explosive message. It is happening because of our lifestyle. What we eat leads to chronic diseases, leads to inflammation that leads to beta amyloid plaque. I just read an article in which they were feeding lab rats the Western diet. I don't know if they were giving them hamburgers and French fries. And they were starting to develop the beta amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of really interesting research about keto diets and Alzheimer's that might be a preventative strategy. What do you think about that?
I'm certainly not a nutritionist. I try to eat much lower on the glycemic scale, meaning I stay away from sugar and processed starch. I don't
Yeah.
eat bread,
Yeah.
but I'm not keto. Keto is the
Mhm.
opposite extreme, and it doesn't sound healthy to me as a long-term dietary option. But again, I'm not a nutritionist. If you were going to create a lifestyle that would make somebody's brain not function well, you'd say, stay inside, look at screens all day, sit, get very little exercise, stay up too late on screens, get interrupted, inadequate sleep, eat badly, live under chronic stress,
This is great advice for people with ADHD because I've seen recent research that says that we possibly have more chance than the rest of the population to have dementia.
There was research that came out of Australia, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, associating ADHD with the Western diet. I think it's all related.
Wow, that's interesting. Kathleen, I want to ask you, what has been most helpful to you as a treatment or a strategy to help with your ADHD?
I wouldn't say a single thing. There's not one thing that fixed everything. It's learning and paying attention to how my brain operates and then engaging in problem solving. My husband and I have been on vacation the past couple of weeks. We both like to do jigsaw puzzles. Talk about distraction, doing 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, all of these shapes and colors. My husband is an astrophysicist, and you talk about somebody that's focused. We approach these puzzles very differently. I'm looking for a blue, but oh no, there's a butterfly, and I know where that goes. I'm just all over the place. We had a lamp over the puzzle so we could see it better, and it went out. I got out my iPhone, which has the little light on it. The light covers a very small, I'm looking at the puzzle pieces, and all of a sudden I'm not distracted.
Oh, interesting.
I can only see 2 or 3 pieces. It was so remarkable. I said, this is how ADHD people should do puzzles.
I've never really done any treatments per se.
I would say I've been doing treatments for the past 30 years. I am constantly working with and problem solving with my clients, using my own daily life as an example or sharing something that I've learned. I really think that the process of ADHD has to do with finding your tribe, being around people that understand and accept you. And boy, have I found my tribe at my clinic. At least half of us have ADHD. And I would say that we're better at helping other people with ADHD because we really get it.
Don't you think people with ADHD also need a few obsessive compulsive people in their lives to help them?
Oh, yes. And that's where my marriage comes in. I always say, you're the guy that keeps the trains running on time.
But without judgment, if it's possible to find that person who's not punishing you or judging you.
Exactly. One of my biggest struggles with ADHD is I get so engrossed in what I'm doing that I literally lose all track of time.
Just actually sounds like a great thing. It sounds like flow. It sounds like something we all desire.
It's a great thing unless you have a meeting in 15 minutes.
That's true.
It's a great thing unless you're supposed to leave for the airport in 20 minutes.
Do you find yourself missing a lot of planes?
Not missing planes, but boy, I've come close. My freshman year in college, I went to school near Atlanta, and my family lived in Florida, and I was flying home for spring break. I wanted to buy my mother something nice as a gift. I hadn't seen her since the Christmas holidays. Lost complete track of time, missed my plane. It was the last plane out.
Oh, no.
And so here I am, a teenage girl by myself in the airport because I'd missed my plane. So fast forward many years, and I'm invited to speak at a conference in Germany. I got to the airport only to realize that I had brought my out-of-date passport. My brother-in-law, that dear guy, drove out to my house, got the passport from my husband. I was the last person on the plane, and I kept saying, he's coming, he's coming.
You made it. Wow.
I made it. But yeah, life is a lot more exciting when you have ADHD.
Oh, for sure. But do you have advice, like a special advice that you give your clients to not end up in situations like that?
Judith Kohlberg is a very good professional organizer, and she and I wrote a book called ADD-Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life. There are a lot of tips and strategies in there, but one of them is to have a launching pad, which is basically just a surface can be a table, anything, where you walk out of the house. My launching pad is my breakfast room table. I put my keys, my phone, my purse, my jacket, my umbrella, my whatever. That's where they go. You don't have to keep it all in your head as you're going out the door.
That's one that's been very helpful to me. Are there other great nuggets that we should tell our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. I was, as many people with ADHD, one of these believers in instant transitions. I had this teletransporter. I could be doing this and then I'll immediately be there doing that, not realizing that it takes time to get ready to leave and it takes time to get there. There may be traffic. People with ADHD don't often plan for all the contingencies and certainly don't plan for, I need 15 minutes to get ready before I walk out the door. Planning to do X, fill in the blank. I've learned to do that. I plan for tomorrow tonight. I lay my clothes out just like you would do for a 6-year-old because it really helps me the next morning to get ready to function. Yeah, so planning
I've
ahead.
only in later life have I gotten to airports really early. I used to just cut that so short. And
Yes.
now I find, okay, bring a book. But it's so much less stressful.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
You've written a book for children, Learning to Slow Down and Pay Attention. I'm just wondering if you have any great advice about how you learn to slow down. How do you teach yourself that?
I wouldn't even say I've learned to slow down. What we have to do to live well with ADHD, and I think it is possible to do so, is to be conscious of your tendencies, to be conscious of your Achilles heels, if you will. They're not the same for all of us. For example, I wouldn't say that I'm impulsive. A lot of people are impulsive and they shop impulsively, or they get involved in gambling, or they make bad decisions when they're upset. That's not me at all. That's some people, but I know my Achilles heels are losing track of time, getting distracted. I always joke about my curious George brain. I have multiple channels running at all times. And
For
just
sure.
being aware of that, I'm just so much more conscious of the power of nature to help us take a deep breath and regroup. I joke that my dog has added an extra decade to my life because he gets me outside multiple times a day. I walk twice a day, which means I'm getting the exercise, I'm getting the exposure to nature. Learning to live consciously, because it's not going to go away. You're going to have the same brain, but just being aware.
One of my favorite pieces of advice that I have a little note on my computer saying, pause before you email, because I'm impulsive. I can offend people with email. So I read it over. That's one of my little Achilles heels, I guess.
Oh, I used to joke that I kept the 3M company in business with all the Post-it notes that I bought. I write notes to myself.
Yeah.
My daughter, who is middle-aged now and has ADHD, saw me doing that when she was a little girl. Her only choice was to feed her cat. She'd write these little notes, feed the cat, and she'd stick it all over the house, feed the cat.
This has been great.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been. It's great to meet you in person.
This has been a production of Inattentive ADHD Coalition. Check us out at iadhd.org and see how you can help us by donating or by spreading awareness about inattentive ADHD. Thank you.